Welcome back to the second part of our lecture on contractual exposure. We had a historical discussion of a company going bankrupt because of this particular risk. This example served to motivate us um, to study ways of hedging or purchasing insurance against this exposure. Here are five ways to purchase insurance or hedge transaction exposure. This is a very common question in my exams. Write five methods or name five methods for hedging transaction or contractual exposures. These methods are: one, through product pricing; two, a forward cover; three, a money market hedge; four, an option market hedge; and five, do nothing or leave it unhedged. Number one and number five are quite easy. Therefore, I talk about them in a few sentences and we're done. Number two, three, and four are more involved. And then there is a discussion why we do a forward cover and we don't do future contracts. And that discussion would come separate later. So let's first focus on product pricing. This method simply says give the risk to the customer, which amounts to saying, hey, I'm pricing my product in dollars because I'm an American firm. Take it or leave it. I'm pricing my product in euros because I'm a German firm. Take it or leave it. This usually does not work in international trade for several reasons. Number one, price is a marketing issue. It's not just cost plus profit. Therefore, if we are selling BMWs in US, we are competing with a set of cars that the customer considers together as a feasible set. And if we lower our price too much, we would not be considered a luxury car, even though dollar had become expensive and we can lower our price. Also, if we increase our price too much because of foreign exchange rate fluctuation and the fact that dollar had become cheap now against euro, well, the customer would go to the competition. The other cars that are competing in the same group would essentially have better prices than us, and this marketing problem exists. So why are we discussing this method through product pricing? Well, if we are a specialty store, for example, we make these precision ball bearings that only one supplier in Germany has them and almost nobody else has it, a monopoly. Then we could say this is priced in euros, and customer has to pay it because it's a monopoly. That's the only place they can get the product. Or we are a catalog house, Oshkosh Bagosh, um, and once in a while we get a customer from China. They got to pay in dollars, and there's a catalog and the price is in dollars. That may work for these specialty stores, niche marketers, essentially monopolies. Finally, we go to method number five because it's easy and I want to do it with few sentences. Leave it unchanged. The best comparison for remembering this method is comparing it to your health insurance. If you are living in a country where you have the option of buying or not buying health insurance, and you want to self-insure, you may save some money because the insurance company charges the insurance premium and there is some profit built into that insurance premium. But if, God forbid, there is a heart transplant or some major operation, one may have to pay $50,000 for that operation, and I wouldn't be able to afford it. So, for that sort of that kind of cost that can financially ruin me or put a lot of pressure on my finances, I would not self-insure, and most of us will not self-insure uh, in health insurance if we were given the choice. And take that to leave it unhedged for a company. It says that, yeah, if you're a huge company with perfect financing, that you could self-insure, and this cost doesn't it's not significant, it certainly doesn't make you bankrupt, then it might be, you might save money to not hedge and basically live with gains and losses that you have in foreign exchange. Usually, this happens when this gain and losses from foreign exchange are a drop in the bucket. If we had a lot of domestic sales, and once in a while we get a few customers from Japan or some other country, we say, well, we just eat up the losses in foreign exchange. We could even price it in their currency and have them pay less or more, depending on the value of this foreign currency, and not worry that this additional income or loss would significantly affect our operations. Okay, so both of these methods, number one and number five, are minor methods. Let us go to our three major methods, which would be the main topic of this discussion. Number one, forward cover. If you have done my past lectures, you are already familiar with forward covers because when we did the interest rate arbitrage in lecture 2, we had a covered interest rate arbitrage, and this word cover came from the fact that we purchased a forward contract to pay off these future payments of foreign currency at a fixed price. So forward cover is something that we are already familiar with. However, this is a good place to do it again, and repetition is very important in education. Usually, we learn things by repeating them several times and getting our hands dirty, putting our sleeve up, getting the hands in the mud, and doing an exercise or two ourselves and an exam, and then we would learn. And that's how it usually works for most of us. Okay, so let's redo it. First, a definition. It says a forward cover is a position in the forward contracts that at maturity generates enough foreign currency to cover the transaction exposure. As I said before, each one of these words are loaded with some meaning, so we want to focus on these. We are taking a position in a forward contract. Usually, that means we go to a bank and purchase a forward contract. And banks are often intermediaries in forward contracts. Of course, forward contracts are also available over the counter. This word over the counter comes from someone sitting behind the table, but really implies that there is a market of dealers, such as your used car dealer, if you want to think of a dealer that way, connected to each other via computers and telephone lines. NASDAQ, for example, is an over-counter market, but New York Stock Exchange is a place of trading. It's an exchange, so it's not over the counter. Okay, so forward contract is a contract. Think of us today exchanging a piece of paper. On that piece of paper, we promise the bank to pay them €1 million, and the bank promises to pay us a certain amount of dollars based on this forward rate. And this contract is written for some time in future, for example, 2 months from now. That fixed forward price would be observed. Both of us have to trade at that fixed forward price 2 months from now. If not, we are in violation of a contract. That's legally called default, and they can drag us to bankruptcy court. So, a forward cover is getting a contractual position with a forward contract, usually with a bank or over the market, over the counter, as I mentioned before. And then we get to this word at maturity. The word maturity means when the contract ends. For example, when you borrow money, maturity is the date where you have to pay it. So once we have to perform according to this contract, its maturity, we want the contract to give us enough foreign currency, and we pay for this foreign currency at a fixed known exchange rate today, um, but we make the payment in our home currency and in the future. And this way we don't have transaction exposure because the exchange rate is well known and fixed. Okay, let's do all this with an example. Again, this is an example borrowed from Harvard Business School lecture notes. And the nice thing about this example is that it is carried through all these three different methods, and it gives you a basis to compare these methods, see if they are financially different, if we have better coverage, and gives you the ability to choose one of them. And of course, there is a nice case study that we often do with these lectures, and that case study gets us to take our Excel out and calculate the best hedging method, and we do it with several different random variables and different hedging methods. But right now we are doing a very simple-minded example that fully illustrates the point. Maybe instead of simple-minded, I should be more charitable and say a classroom example, an example that pedagogically helps us to learn the material, but it's not so difficult that make us lose the discussion in our first attempt to learn about forward covers. Here is the example. It says La Pointe, a Swiss firm, contracts to receive $1 million for sale of knives from an American company called New Kitchen. A nice little joke or play with words. Harvard uses this word "la pointe" for the Swiss firm, telling us that perhaps the company is in French part of Switzerland, and point because they're selling knives. And the American wholesaler is called New Kitchen because they are selling kitchen equipment or utensils such as knives, and they sell it to retailers. So the contract is for $1 million, and the knives are going to come from Switzerland and be shipped to US. But the payment is in 6 months, 6 months in the future. And we discussed this before. The wholesaler needs a bit of time to make some sales and make some money and pay this. Again, an old example, the Swiss franc is 5 Swiss francs per dollar, and we call this S or a spot. S for a spot, the spot exchange rate for Swiss franc today. 6 months forward also has a known price today. This is the price you see. And notice that this price is different from S. F, or forward price, is 5.115 Swiss franc per dollar. Both these prices are known today, and the reason that they are different is that they are set by demand and supply. If a lot of people show up at the bank and want to make 6-month forward contracts to sell dollars, then dollar becomes cheaper in that market. And not the same people, firms, and participants show up in the spot market wanting to sell dollars. So dollar may be more expensive or cheaper in the forward market. Both of them can happen. And of course, you have seen this in my past lectures too. If dollar is more expensive in the forward market, we say dollar is at a forward premium. And if dollar is cheaper in the forward market, we say dollar is at a forward discount. And we say dollar is at forward parity if the spot and forward prices are the same. I guess you can't see my ugly tie, but if this was a discount tie, I paid less money for it. It was cheaper. And if it was a premium product, I paid more for it. Same words apply here. Dollar has a premium for forward price, means that its dollar is more expensive when you buy it, for example, 6 months from now. Okay, Swiss yearly interest rates are given as 14.83%. Again, as I said before, this is an old Harvard Business School example. These days, interest rates are much cheaper all around the world because of recessions that we have experienced. So we use the notation R, capital R here for interest rates. In finance and economics, we use also a small r. We also use I and little I. And don't let these notations confuse you, but there's several of them that are used, but relatively standard. And then we go to US interest rate. RD, domestic interest rates, are 10% in this example. At the bottom of this slide, you see 5.115 divided by 5 equals 1.023 equals 1.07415 divided by 1.05. A nice question is, what is this writing? I lovingly refer to it as my cheating notes. These numbers are familiar to us. 5.115 is F that I used up there. 5 is S. So the left-hand side is F divided by S. And the right-hand side is 1.07415. That's not quite familiar, but if you multiply it by 2, you get 14.83%. 14.83% is the yearly interest rates. In finance and economic, interest rates are always coded yearly. But if we borrow for 6 months, we pay half of this interest, half of the yearly rate. We pay 7.415%. So 1.07415 is what we get, the return that we get after we pay 14.83% interest for 6 months. You might say, where does that one come? Well, if you loan 100 and the interest rate is 10%, after a year you get 110. 100 to get your money back, so we multiply the 100 by 1 and we get 100. And 10% or zero point 0.1 or 10 extra interest, so you get 110. So to get 10% extra return, we multiply by 1.1 when interest rates are 10%. Here, the 6-month interest rates are 7.415%. So to calculate the return, we multiply by 1.07415. Divide that by 1.05. Now it became easy. This 0.05 stands for 5% interest for 6 months, or 10% yearly interest in the domestic countries or US. And we had a discussion in my last lecture about which country is domestic and which country is foreign. It's not based on where we are, but it's based on units that you're given. So in this problem, I have units of 5 Swiss franc per $1, because it's per $1. US is the domestic country. If I have given you the rates per Swiss franc, then US would be the foreign country. Okay, now let's discuss a forward cover. This Swiss company, La Pointe, makes a contract to sell $1 million American dollars forward and to buy Swiss franc in 6 months, because the American wholesaler gives the Swiss $1 million. Dollars is not their currency and its value can change, but we could get a fixed price today for exchanging our dollars 6 months from now if we are the Swiss company. That fixed price is the forward price, and that's 5.115 Swiss franc per $1. And of course, this forward price is available from our friendly banker, right? When New Kitchen pays La Pointe $1 million, and that when is in 6 months, according to this contract, if they don't go bankrupt, then La Pointe delivers on its forward contract. We perform. The Swiss just transfer this $1 million to the bank, and the bank gives them Swiss francs, but the rate is fixed. So we get the $1 million, and for every dollar we get 5.115 Swiss francs. So we multiply it by 5.115 Swiss franc per $1, or as I said before, you leave the units in and you can cancel the $2 signs and the Swiss franc sign stays, and you get 5,115,000 Swiss francs. And that's the story of a forward cover. By getting into a forward contract, the Swiss had made sure that no matter what, high water or low water, no matter if dollar becomes cheap or expensive, they would get a fixed amount of Swiss franc, 5,115,000 Swiss franc. In effect, we have converted this to a domestic deal. It's just like selling the knives to someone in Switzerland for 5,115,000 Swiss francs, and from this we can calculate our profit, consider our costs, and do business. A picture speaks 1,000 words, so let's do the same example with a picture. On the left-hand side, here I have New Kitchen, the American company. Here I have La Pointe. There is an arrow here going from the Swiss firm La Pointe to New Kitchen, and on the arrow it says knives. The Swiss firm sends the product at, under this arrow it says T equals 0, at time 0. T equals 0, the knives go from Switzerland to US. At T equals 6 months, 6 months from now,